Behind Warren Buffett's extraordinary success lies a genius like few others. A person whose wisdom has inspired millions of investors and entrepreneurs. In a life that spans a century and has been marked by the most significant historical events of the last decades. This is the story of one of the most intriguing, resilient, and intelligent individuals you can encounter. Welcome to the story of Charlie Munger. Charles Thomas Munger was born on January 1, 1924, in Omaha, Nebraska. During his youth, Charlie worked for Warren Buffett's grandfather at his grocery store, where Warren himself would also work years later. Charlie worked 12-hour shifts without rest, earning $2 a day, an experience that prepared him for hard work and instilled a strong work ethic that would last throughout his life. Charlie began his education at Dundee Elementary School, where he stood out for challenging his teachers' knowledge from a young age. Because Charlie has always been an avid reader, and his parents, Al and Florence Munger, constantly gifted him books to encourage this habit. Charlie began to enter the world of business from a very young age, with a very particular venture, breeding hamsters. He sold and traded them with friends until his mother forced him to stop when the smell from his small farm of 35 hamsters became unbearable. Like many people who grew up during that time, Charlie was deeply affected by the Great Depression that began in 1929. Omaha was not immune, and Charlie remembers people offering their work in exchange for food and dozens of homeless individuals wandering the streets. In 1941, Charlie graduated from high school and began studying mathematics and physics at the University of Michigan, drawn to the numerical logic of these sciences. After completing his second year of college and turning 19, Charlie joined the Army Air Corps, where he would achieve the rank of second lieutenant. As part of the program, Charlie attended Caltech in Pasadena, California, studying meteorology. His knowledge was used to authorize the takeoff of airplanes during World War II. It was during this time that he applied one of the principles he had learned from studying mathematics: always invert. Charlie has a particular way of thinking and solving problems, which is not based on facing them head-on, but in an inverted way. In his work in the military, to prevent as many accidents as possible, he approached the problem by asking how he could cause the most accidents and then avoided those situations at all costs. This methodology has continued to guide him and is something he has recommended throughout his life.
There are all kinds of tricks that I just got into by accident in life. One, I invert all the time. I was a weather forecaster when I was in the Air Corps. And how did I handle my new assignment? I said, how can I kill these pilots? Now, that's not the question that most people would ask. But I want to know what the easiest way to kill them would be so I could avoid it.
While in the military, he married Nancy Huggins, and in 1946, they had their first child, Teddy, shortly after Charlie finished his service. Charlie then went on to study law at Harvard, following in the footsteps of his father and grandfather, both lawyers. Charlie had few problems at Harvard. However, just like with his teachers when he was young, his extensive knowledge and high IQ made him annoying to many people around him. Decades later, his unfiltered way of speaking is one of his most admired characteristics. Charlie graduated with honors in 1948 and moved with his now 3 children to Southern California, where he joined the law firm of Wright and Garrett. In the early 1950s, Charlie experienced one of the most challenging periods of his life. After divorcing Nancy in 1953, his son Teddy was diagnosed with leukemia. This disease, for which there was no cure at the time, would ultimately take his son's life. During Teddy's illness, Charlie would visit him in the hospital and then walk through the streets of Pasadena, crying for hours. Despite the divorce and his son's treatment leaving him in ruins, Charlie refused to let this difficult situation hinder him from regaining his path and moving forward in life.
I don't like any feeling of being victimized. I think that's a counterproductive way to think as a human being. And I am not a victim.
How did
I'm a survivor.
After his divorce, Charlie married Nancy Berry Borthwick in 1956 and moved to Los Angeles. Charlie worked long hours for his law firm but felt that he wasn't earning enough for his growing family, which now included Nancy's 2 daughters, making a total of 8 children. As a result, he began investing on his own, primarily in businesses owned by his clients in which he had extensive knowledge. He also started investing in real estate, and one of his early ventures was building apartments in Pasadena with one of his clients and friends, Otis Booth. The success they achieved led them to more projects and expansion to other locations in California, such as Alhambra. Charlie reinvested his earnings, allowing him to participate in increasingly larger projects. And by 1964, he had accumulated over $1.4 million through real estate ventures. In 1962, Charlie formed his own law firm called Munger, Tolles and Hills. However, this was not Charlie's long-term goal, as he aspired to devote himself entirely to investments. Especially after meeting a particular person who had convinced him of this, Warren Buffett. The death of his father led Charlie to visit Omaha in 1959. There, one of his father's friends, Dr. Davis, and his wife invited Charlie to a dinner at their house because they wanted him to meet someone. That person was none other than Warren Buffett, whom Dr. Davis found to be incredibly similar to Charlie. In fact, Dr. Davis had been one of the early investors in Warren Buffett's partnership because he reminded him of Charlie. When the two met, they talked for hours, ignoring everyone else, and Warren told Charlie that someone like him shouldn't waste time as a lawyer if he truly wanted to make a significant amount of money. Charlie and Warren stayed in touch, sharing investment ideas, and years later, Charlie would create his own investment firm with his friend Jack Wheeler. When they first met, Warren was 29 years old, and Charlie was 35, and they ended up being a tremendous influence on each other's way of thinking and investing. Buffett Partnership, Warren's investment vehicle at the time, used Charlie's law firm for their transactions, which helped Charlie attract more clients. Charlie left his law firm as an active member in 1965, but his name and influence remained within it. When he left the firm, he transferred his ownership stake to the family of one of the founding partners, who had left behind a wife and 2 children when he died of cancer. The investment firm that Charlie ran with Jack Wheeler was a great success, and from 1962 to 1975, it achieved an average annual return of nearly 20%, while the Dow Jones had an average annual increase of 5% during the same period. Charlie and Warren shared an investment in blue chip stamps. This company provided blue chip stamps to customers as a reward for their purchases at affiliated stores. These stamps were placed in savings books, and when a book was filled, it could be redeemed for a variety of products available in a rewards catalog. Blue chip stamps incentivized customer loyalty through the accumulation and redemption of stamps. Warren became the largest shareholder, and Charlie became the second. After a challenging period in 1973 and 1974, Charlie decided that he no longer wanted to manage other people's money and chose to close his fund in 1975. As part of the liquidation, investors received a portion of the shares in which the fund had invested, primarily in blue chip stamps. Warren Buffett, who had also closed his partnership, was now managing his investments through Berkshire Hathaway, a struggling textile company. Warren had been winding down the operations of this company and using the money for other investments, including blue chip stamps. Charlie received shares of Berkshire in exchange for his blue chip stamps shares, and the duo finally formalized their partnership, one of the most profitable in history. Warren Buffett had primarily learned his investment style from Benjamin Graham, and for years, he was successful with his cigar bot strategy. This strategy involved buying shares of severely undervalued companies with the intention of liquidating them or waiting for the market to correct their price. Although Charlie was also influenced by Benjamin Graham's teachings, he saw some flaws in his investment philosophy. On one hand, he considered it excessively cautious, a result of the hardships that Graham, like many people of his time, experienced during the Great Depression. On the other hand, he saw a problem in the way Warren Buffett was applying Graham's principles because it was not scalable. As Berkshire accumulated more money, it became increasingly difficult to apply the strategy. Charlie changed the way Warren was managing Berkshire, and Warren shifted his focus from mediocre companies at low prices to exceptional companies at fair prices. Although Charlie is modest and claims that Warren would have changed his investment style even if they hadn't met, this transformation led to Charlie being called the architect of Berkshire Hathaway.
Charlie Munger has had a big impact on me in moving me toward looking for wonderful companies at fair prices rather than fair companies at wonderful prices. And that was enormously important because it enabled Berkshire to scale up in a way that would have been impossible to do otherwise.
When Charlie received Berkshire shares in exchange for his blue chip stamp shares, Berkshire's stock was valued at $38, while as of June 2023, the stock is priced at $514,000. And Berkshire, a textile company destined to disappear, is now among the top 10 most valuable companies in the world, with a value of $740 billion. The philosophy of Berkshire is based on acquiring good businesses and managing them in a decentralized manner. Charlie and Warren have opposed actively participating in the operation of a company, but they are willing to manage the excess capital of that company. Because they have created a wide network of businesses, they can take capital from one and reinvest it in another with better prospects. And for this reason, in the early days of this partnership, they were attracted to companies like See's Candy. See's Candy is a company founded by Charles See and his wife Florence in Los Angeles in 1921 and highly recognized on the west coast of the United States. Charlie and Warren saw that See's Candy was a company with a great cash-generating capacity and required very low reinvestment. This allowed them to take this money and reinvest it in other businesses without sacrificing the growth of See's Candy. Shortly after the acquisition, a company called Russell Stover tried to copy the style of See's Candy stores. But Charlie acted quickly and assembled a group of lawyers to sue this company and ensure that it would not continue. As a result, Russell stopped these practices, and no other company attempted something similar again. The structure of Berkshire explains why Charlie and Warren were attracted to businesses like newspapers. Just like See's Candy, these are businesses that require little reinvestment and, before the internet, were cash-generating machines that could be used in other businesses. But taking money from one business to invest in another quickly led to the formation of a complex network of investments. This raised alarms at the SEC when in 1974 Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger acquired Wesco, a bank in California. This bank was about to be acquired by another bank, which lodged a complaint that triggered an SEC investigation. However, Charlie and Warren managed to avoid any charges and only had to pay a $100,000 fine. Like Warren, Charlie opposes diversification, and in the portfolio he manages for Berkshire Hathaway and for the Daily Journal, he only holds a few companies. Although Charlie's portfolio in Berkshire cannot be known exactly, in the Daily Journal's portfolio, he only has 4 companies: Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Alibaba, and U.S. Bank Corp. Charlie joined the Daily Journal in 1977 and is the chairman of the board. Despite being originally a newspaper, the company's stock has multiplied by over 40 in the last 40 years, largely thanks to Charlie's management of the portfolio. Charlie has been a strong critic of business schools and financial formulas, which he considers completely useless. Like Warren, he avoids any sort of complex calculation when making a decision, preferring an approach based on opportunity cost, where he evaluates hundreds of investment options to determine which one is most favorable. Charlie does not think in terms of whether an investment is good or bad based on its expected return, but rather whether it is good or bad compared to others. Furthermore, as part of his invert thinking, Charlie believes that to succeed in investments, it is necessary to avoid stupidity rather than striving to be brilliant. And he believes that profitability does not come from constantly being active in the market, but from waiting, being patient, and trusting the investments that have been made. His common sense has made his advice sought after, beyond investments, and he is also highly regarded in business, personal finance, and psychology. Charlie Munger would not have achieved the success he did if he hadn't had enough money to make the market returns sufficient to live on and support a family of 8 children. As you can imagine from his personality, Charlie was not a fan of seeking people to invest in his fund and always felt more comfortable managing his own money. That's why Charlie has always emphasized the importance of not overspending and avoiding the luxuries and trivial things in life. Money is useful because it provides freedom, not because it allows for indulgence. And Charlie makes it clear that unlike other entrepreneurs, he was not fearless and made sure to have a significant amount of savings before leaving his law firm to fully dedicate himself to investments. Fortunately, his teachings on money management can be summed up very simply: never spend more than your income.
There once was a man who became the most famous composer in the world, but he was utterly miserable most of the time. And one of the reasons was he always overspent his income. That was Mozart. If Mozart can't get by with this kind of asinine conduct, I don't think you should try it.
Charlie Munger is an avid student of psychology and believes that studying economics and social sciences in general, without considering psychology, is absurd and leads academics to error and investors and entrepreneurs to losses. Therefore, a study of Charlie's life and way of thinking cannot overlook one of his most important contributions, the talk he gave at Harvard in 1995 on the psychology of human misjudgment. These are the main cognitive biases that Charlie mentions in this talk, a list he began constructing when he completed his studies at Harvard, and it has greatly helped him in his career to avoid the irrationality that surrounds him. First, underestimating the power of incentives. The outcomes that are obtained are largely associated with what is being incentivized. Charlie uses the case of FedEx to explain this bias. FedEx needed to process its packages centrally and quickly for its operation to be successful, but it wasn't achieving this. After many failed attempts, the change of paying employees per shift instead of per hour turned out to be the solution. Because the incentive now was to finish as quickly as possible and go home, rather than completing more hours to receive more pay. Second, not accepting reality because it is too painful to confront. Third, seeking to resolve cognitive dissonance quickly. This bias refers to people's need to find quick explanations for doubts and questions. It also involves closing oneself off to the possibility of new ideas and the preservation of previous conclusions. Fourth, association. This is the most commonly used cognitive bias in advertising, where companies seek to associate their brand with positive things and avoid any association with negative things. It is also a bias that entrepreneurs and economists need to understand in order to comprehend people's behavior. For example, when a price is high, it is often associated with higher product quality. Provoking that contrary to normal economic theory, where a higher price leads to lower demand, the exact opposite happens. Fifth, reciprocity bias. People have a tendency to be excessively reciprocal when given something. It is no coincidence that in sales rooms for houses, vehicles, and other expensive products, gifts are given to potential customers. If you want to sell more, pay attention to this bias. If you want to remain rational in your purchases, pay attention to this bias. Sixth, social influence. It is the tendency of people to act like the majority and use others' behavior as proof of validity. Charlie gives the example of the time ExxonMobil acquired a fertilizer company. And subsequently, other oil companies started imitating them with rather poor results. This bias can also be observed in almost every financial bubble. Seventh, authority influence. It is the tendency to attribute greater credibility to information from figures of authority or experts. It extends to obeying authority figures, even when the evidence clearly shows they are wrong. Charlie gives the example of a flight simulation exercise where 25% of the time, when the pilot makes an obvious fatal mistake, the co-pilot does not correct it, leading to a simulated crash. Eighth, scarcity and loss. It is the tendency of people to overreact to what they lose or expected to obtain but did not. Ninth, chemical dependency. It is the bias resulting from dependence on alcohol and drugs. 10th, overestimation of self. It is the tendency of people to overestimate their own ideas. As the saying goes, to a man with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. 11th, availability bias. It is the tendency of people to miscalculate probabilities and consider the limited information they have as true. It is also the association that leads to considering what is available as better. According to Charlie, Coca-Cola has effectively exploited this bias by ensuring supply chains worldwide, making it possible for you to have a Coca-Cola even in Cuba. 12th, Lollapalooza effect. It is the result obtained when a large number of biases are combined simultaneously. If you ever find yourself in a cult and wonder how you ended up there, it is due to the skillful exploitation of several of your cognitive biases by your now leaders. If you liked the video and want to support the channel, please share this content to reach more people who can benefit from learning about the life of this great investor and businessman. Until next time.